Part 2 of Telepathically Dispatched. In our first installment of this story, our cab driver picks up a mysterious stranger under unusual circumstances. The stranger purchases some bulk items at a Safeway store and asks to be driven to an undetermined location east of North Bend near Snoqualmie Pass. The man obviously wasn't into small talk, so I kept my mouth shut and began to assess my situation. The meter was already approaching the $10 mark, which is what I'd been paid so far. The fare to Edgewick Road would probably be at least $40, and this is 1980. I knew the man had more money because I had seen the cashier at the store give him some change. Anyway, his cargo was worth at least $100, and there was no way he could run out on a fare and take it with him. Unless I glanced to the side at him. He just sat there with a vacant look in his eyes. His clothing looked like it came from Goodwill. He wore a green cotton shirt with brown pinstripes and a pair of old brown polyester slacks. His shoes were a scuffed-up pair of old brown wingtips. I realized then that he wasn't wearing a coat or a jacket, even though it was still wintertime. Nothing to conceal any bulky bulges, I thought with relief. Besides, he seemed so calm and peaceful. It was hard to imagine him doing anything threatening or violent. I knew there were people who lived on Edgewick Road, as I had passed several houses on my way up to the Forest Service Road in previous years. He was probably just an eccentric man who lived in a small cottage in the woods and came to town once a month for supplies, I told myself. He did have an odd shopping list, but once I did some shopping for a man who apparently lived on red port and watermelons. To each his own. But why would anyone who lived out in the woods buy all those Presto logs? Oh well, mine was not to reason why. The other drivers downtown would have a hard time believing this one, I thought. As we headed up the hill out of Issaquah, I decided to try to make conversation with the man to find out more about him and our destination. I broke the silence with a harmless question. "Have you lived out in North Bend long?" I inquired. The man turned slowly to look at me. "I don't live here. I'm just visiting," he said. "Oh, then you have friends or relatives out in North Bend. It's beautiful country up there," I commented. "Yes, it is," he said. "But I don't have any friends or relatives around here. It was just the closest place to town I could find to park my rig." "Oh," I said. I thought for a few moments about what kind of rig he must have had. It must have been some kind of large bus or camper. Maybe he lived in it and just camped out as he wandered around the country. Then I remembered there was a truck stop off the highway right at Edgewick Road. The man must have been some kind of spaced-out truck driver who had his rig parked at the truck stop for repairs or something. "Are you going to that truck stop off the highway by Edgewick Road?" I asked. The man looked at me, then stared blankly at the road ahead. "No," he said. "I'm going several miles up the road from the highway, and my rig is not a truck, if that's what you are thinking." "Oh," I said. By this time, we were approaching North Bend. I saw the sign saying 436th Avenue exit was 1 mile away. I was really curious what kind of rig the man had. As I took the Edgewick Road exit, I popped the question. "What kind of rig do you have?" I asked. "Is it some kind of mobile home?" The man smiled proudly. "Yes, it's a kind of mobile home, but it's too hard to describe to you. You'll have to wait until we get there. Turn left here," he said as we came to the stop sign at the end of the exit ramp. I headed north for about a half mile to a point where the road came to a T. "Keep to the right here," he said. The road dipped and curved along the river for several miles until it intersected with a gravel Forest Service road. Judging by the condition of the road, I assumed that it was used heavily by logging trucks. The man looked around, as if to check his surroundings. "Turn left here," he said, "and proceed for exactly 1.6 miles. That will be the location at which my rig is parked." I glanced at my meter. It read $53.80. I drove the 1.6 miles down the bumpy gravel road, as my passenger had instructed. "Stop here," the man said. We were in the middle of a clearing that had been logged out years ago. I looked around, but all I could see were a few clumps of brush and some old slash piles. "It looks like your rig isn't here," I turned and said to the man. He looked me straight in the eye and grinned. "Of course it is. Just look to your left." I turned my head to the left and gasped with astonishment. There, not 30 feet from my cab, was a large silver cylinder at least 20 feet high and 100 feet long. There was no way I could have missed seeing it when I first arrived, but I had. What is it?" I asked. "That, my dear boy, is what you would call a spaceship." To be continued.